Welcome to Jamaica Magazine. I am Theodore Henry. This week we tackle issues relating to adolescent health. You know, the little things you neglect but know you should be doing? Eating the right foods, getting the right amount of exercise, abstaining from substance abuse. The things to help you maintain a healthy lifestyle. Yes, those things. But before them, justice is served. Coming up on Issues and Answers, the Justice Minister will be discussing matters relating to the plea bargaining legislation. Stay tuned as the magazine unfolds. The Plea Negotiations and Agreement Act 2017 was recently passed in the House of Parliament. Justice Minister Delroy Chuck sits in on Issues and Answers to give a better understanding of what the legislation entails.
Thanks for joining us for Issues and Answers. I'm Ian Boyne. Today we talk about the provisions, the advantages of the plea bargaining legislation. We have with us the Minister of Justice, the Honorable Delroy Chuck, and he'll be shedding light on this critical area. We thank you so much for your company. Minister, good to have you.
Always a pleasure being on your program.
On the show. The plea bargaining legislation, what are the advantages of it?
Well, just recently, we revised the plea bargaining bill. Originally, it provided that for you to engage in plea bargaining, the accused person would have to give some assistance to the Crown in terms of implicating others, in terms of solving crimes. Yes. That was not going anywhere because no one wanted to be an informer, especially knowing the consequences in Jamaica. So we have a completely new bill now, where the plea bargain resembles exactly what happens in the United States. And what happens in the United States is virtually all crimes that the prosecution and defense counsel enter into negotiations, and in 97% of criminal cases in the federal court and 94% in the state courts, you have a bargain. There's a conviction based on a guilty plea.
As much as that?
90-odd%. So the position is that more than 9 out of 10 cases are actually dealt with by a plea bargain. In Jamaica, it's the reverse. Much less than 10% actually accused persons plead guilty. This has to change. The criminal justice system is overburdened. It is really, the backlog is such that the courts are bursting at the seams, and in many courts, every week you can see that they're at the point of collapsing. And unless we find an alternative way to deal with the huge number of cases which actually get into the parish courts and into the circuit courts, we will never be able to resolve and really settle these matters appropriately. So this plea bargaining bill is meant to tackle some of these cases. And how it intends to do this, Ian, is that the prosecution and the defense counsel and the plea judge will have to bear in mind that if you can get an accused person to plead guilty, it saves an enormous amount of time and resources, not only of the state, but of the judge's judicial time, the prosecution preparation, the number of witnesses, including the police who have to come to court, and also the defense counsel who have to prepare and cross-examine, sum up, and address the jury, etc. And what is necessary, in my view, in all the cases, we have to look, at least attempt to get a settlement. Because Ian, if we look at the circuit courts for this term, this Hillary term, we have in excess of 2,000 cases, over 700 cases in the home circuit. if we try these cases without any more coming on stream, and by the way, cases are coming on every week, but let us say these 700 cases, a case takes an average, I mean, some take a couple of days, others take a couple of weeks, but on average, let us say you try one per week. It's unlikely you would be able to try more than 4 per week. If we sit for 40 weeks, that's 160 cases. 160 cases for the year. So 700 cases, you can see immediately you're going into 5 years just to try those 700 cases. It is impossible.
Yes.
So my view is that we have to find a way that in all the circuits this year and in the parish courts, we find a way to have guilty pleas in at least 50%, preferably more,
Yes,
but in at least 50%. And why do I say 50%, Ian? My view is that more than 50% of the accused persons who have been charged know something. Know something and probably are guilty as charged. I'm not saying all, because you have many cases in which there are good defenses, such as self-defense, and you have cases in which persons have been charged wrongly. But I would say more than 50%. So if those persons who know something about the case will just accept responsibility and say, yes, I participated, I am the offender, and having accepted that responsibility, negotiate with the Crown, the prosecution, I'm willing to plead guilty, but let us look at sentence. Now, that doesn't mean that the sentence he wants is the sentence he's going to get. And in fact, I go further. I would start out by saying that the prosecutors, the clerk of the courts, who, by the way, their name will soon be changed because the clerk of the courts will become a part of the DPP shortly, so they could be assistant public prosecutors. But in every single case, based on the facts, based on the state where the case is, and once the prosecutor feels that they have a good case, should make an offer to the accused person, perhaps through his or her attorney, that if you plead guilty, we are willing to propose a sentence of X years. Now, that begins the process of negotiation. The accused person is unlikely to accept the first offer of the sentence. So the accused person usually will say, I am only going to plead guilty if I get a non-custodial sentence, which is nonsense. Because in many serious crimes, the judge simply cannot impose a non-custodial sentence because the judge, who is the plea judge accepting a guilty plea, will have to take into consideration the public interest. And the public interest, including the sensitivities of the victim, the investigator who knows a lot about the accused person, those must be taken into consideration. What is the accused doing? Is he remorseful? Is he contrite? Is he willing to compensate the victim? All of these will be taken into consideration in deciding what is an appropriate sentence.
I'm going to break you at this point, Minister. Minister Delroy Chuck giving us an absorbing justification of the plea bargaining bill. He has more when we come back from the short break.
Every time there's a strong breeze, me yard full up a leaf. End of my nightmare.
She can't chop down the guava tree and get away with it. It's a bearing fruit tree. It's alright. Me and I will have it out in here today.
Lord Jesus. Dude, stop. John, want to man.
But
John, look here. At least hear what she have to say first now. Hear what she have to say. No, but about the war situation, man. Listen, we can go down to the Restorative Justice Center, you know, man, and sort this thing out. You don't want to set up yourself for jail. Come on, let's sort out this thing. Once and for all.
Restore the peace, restore the love, restore the niceness. Restorative justice. Respect each other.
A program of the Ministry of Justice funded through CSJP.
Welcome back, Minister of Justice, the Honorable Delroy Chuck, speaking to us about plea bargaining. It's a critical piece of legislation, and it has an impact, will have an impact on the struggle to contain crime. So, Minister, you were going through.
And I was saying that we need to get at least 50% of the cases. Can you imagine, Ian, if the 700 cases, which, by the way, when September comes, it could be 800.
Yes.
Because additional cases are coming up. In other words, the increase or the incoming cases far outweigh those which are disposed of.
Absolutely.
Now, the point is that if we can get half of them, can you imagine, let's say 700, and we can get 350 cases where you have a plea bargain, 50%.
Yes.
Can you imagine the impact it would have, how much time would be saved, how much resources from the judge, the prosecutor, the attorneys, and the police would be saved? And I'm saying it is possible, but there has to be give and take. Not only on the prosecution side, but also on the accused side. So accused persons at the moment feel that their lawyers must go out there and fight the case.
That's right.
They have to take the advice of the attorneys. If the case is strong, even if it is weak, the chance of a jury convicting you or a judge sitting alone convicting you based on the fact is still very great. And once you're convicted in a trial, you might get a very high sentence. And in fact, Ian, just this week, I know of a case where the attorneys urge the accused man to plead guilty. And in fact, the Crown would have dropped the case from murder to manslaughter based on the facts. He said no, he wants to try it. These attorneys were the third set of attorneys because the attorney was saying you really don't have much chance.
Yes.
So plead guilty to manslaughter, you might get 10 or 12 years, perhaps less. The case was tried. He was convicted for murder, and only a couple of days ago, he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 40 years before he's considered for parole. Accused persons will have to bear in mind, you go for all or nothing, and you might end up in jail for a long time when even with the most serious offenses, if you can get a 15 or 20 years sentence with a guilty plea, I'm going to hold it out that once you've pleaded guilty, further consideration should be given by the state. And when I say this, Ian, what I would like to put in place, that the Parole Act for persons who have pleaded guilty, who have shown remorse, contrite, they have accepted that they did wrong, that they should be given, not entitled, but they should be eligible for early parole. In other words, if they go to the prisons and they participate in rehabilitation programs, their families keep in touch with them and they're in good grace with everything, then they should be allowed to serve a greater part of their sentence in the community, especially if the victims forgive them, especially if they admit to their wrongdoing and the family or the victim themselves said, yes, we're willing to forgive, and therefore the restorative justice part of the whole program.
Are victims a part of the plea bargaining process?
They will be, because in the negotiations, the views of the victims, where available, should be taken into consideration. Also, if the victim is no longer there because the victim is a murder case, then the families and friends of the victims will be consulted so that their views can also be taken into consideration. Not that these views are overwhelming, but at least the sensitivities and the passion and the feelings must also be borne in mind. But the point really I'm making now is that even if you get a sentence on pleading guilty, the state, and I intend to look at the Parole Act and also at the expungement law, so that those persons who having pleaded guilty maybe get early parole, and have put crime behind them and show that they are now living fairly decent, upright lives, maybe after 10, 15 years, they could be eligible for expungement of their sentence. So you see, we have to put these incentives and attraction in the system, Ian, because we need to get more guilty pleas. That has not been softened crime.
I was about to mention.
That has not been
whether-
softened crime.
Yes, whether an unintended consequence could be that people feel that they would get off and they would not get as severe a punishment.
Because
as they
one of
are.
the things which I hope, Ian, is that those persons who plead guilty will see it as incumbent on them to try to not only lead a straight life, but to emphasize, especially when they get back in the community, that I want to put crime behind me because I want to be able to finish my parole without having to go back to prison. And also, if I really finish my parole and people can see that I'm leading an upright life, maybe I can get an expungement. Because I can tell you, lots of persons know, beg for expungement, but they're not eligible. They're not eligible. And believe me, it's sometimes cases come to me where persons who have been convicted have served their time 20, 30 years ago, and because they're not eligible for expungement, they don't get it, and I have to look carefully at whether or not to grant it. But what I would say is that in the regime that I'm putting forward, a person who pleads guilty, that he will be not entitled, but will be eligible.
Yes.
Especially after 15, 20 years, you can see that this man is not only a well-recognized, decent citizen in his community. There are persons who are deacons and pastors in church who have put crime behind them, and they still can't travel because they have a case that they committed 20, 30 years ago. And I'm saying that for persons who commit crimes, and they go and from the beginning show that they are remorseful, that they accept that they did wrong, and then thereafter can put it behind them, we must do something. Now, the bill itself, is really one that I hope that defense counsel, prosecutions will buy into. Because, firstly, the cases that are ready are those which I'm hoping that can be negotiated immediately. I would like to see plea bargaining be a major component of the criminal justice system. In other words, prosecutors must see negotiations with defense attorneys as a very important component to get rid of the vast majority of cases. At the moment, you have case management. And in that case management, the defense counsel for the accused can look at the facts. And if the case is overwhelming, it is almost incumbent on the defense attorney to persuade the accused it is in your best interest to plead guilty. At the same time, the Crown must bear in mind the nature and quality of the case. If the case is going nowhere, for heaven's sake, just go forward and say, and ask the jury to acquit because the case is going nowhere. And I would think, Ian, during this 2017, hopefully no later than 2018, there will be no case in the courts over 3 years. You have far too many over 5 years now.
Absolutely.
And I'm saying the plea bargaining, the question of the prosecutors, not offering any evidence, or for that matter, the judges who see cases coming year after year after year,
they themselves
may well have to put their foot down and say, this case has been before us for 5, 6, 7 years. The constitutional rights of the accused has been breached. If it is the fault of the Crown, then the case should be dismissed.
Mister, you're onto a very good case, and I think that if everyone buys into your vision and your advocacy, I think the country as a whole will benefit. It was great to have had you today on Issues and Answers. Minister of Justice, the Honorable Delroy Chuck. Next week I'll be back. Until then, Ian Bourne wishing you a pleasant day.
Smoking, it's bad for your health. There's nothing cool about this habit. Tobacco smoking is a silent killer that will snare you in a horrific cycle of addiction that robs you of your money and your health. And it's not just you who suffers. Those around you who inhale the smoke are also at risk, your friends and loved ones. So stop if you've started, or resist before you begin the habit. Stay healthy.
Whether you are studying or working, as a youth, it is important for you to maintain a healthy diet, exercise regularly, and say no to drugs. Watch this.
Move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. You like to move it.
Just like how you want to invest, right? In the future, you save your money because you want to buy a house, you want to buy a car, whatever it is that you want to do, you invest your money. That's the same way you have to invest in your health now, so that later on, you'll be able to see the rewards.
So, what makes up an investment in a healthy future? A balanced diet, regular exercise, and staying away from harmful drugs are some elements. A balanced diet helps prevent conditions such as obesity and reduces the risk of heart disease and other illnesses.
A lot of emphasis on fruits and veggies. You guys know your fresh fruits, your apples, oranges, bananas, your vegetables, string beans, carrots, callaloo. You want to have a variety. I always think of colors. Colors are a good guide if you know nothing about nutrition. Whole grain and high fiber. The whole wheat bread is good, your whole wheat pasta, but I really want us to make our diet predominantly our ground food, breadfruit, yams, sweet potato, green banana, plantain. Also our oily fish, such as sardines or salmon or tuna or mackerel. Those are fantastic for our omega-3. Lean meats, that's our chicken, fish, pork. Our dairy, soy milk, regular cow's milk, either which one you want to get your calcium, especially for the growing bones. Also, we want to reduce our sugars. That's mostly seen in our fruit juices or sodas.
Once you've established what a balanced diet looks like, it's important to use the right portions.
Half your bowl of vegetables. Look at the callaloo there, and a quarter of your protein, that's your 2 eggs, and another quarter of your starch, that's your green banana. Or you can go down the bottom, and nothing is wrong with having a little bit of healthy fat. Healthy fat is your avocado pear. Very, very, very good for you. Will help clear your arteries.
You should be exercising 3 to 4 times per week just to maintain. If you want to improve your fitness level, you want to be an athlete, you need to be exercising at least 4 to 5 times per week consistently. All right, in order to maintain your health.
A regular 30-minute exercise regime does not necessarily mean going to the gym. With just a chair, you can do a lot. Warm-up exercises, upper and lower body strengthening, abdominals.
Imagine you're hearing the words of boy, you're workless, you're a fool, you come like you're workless, pooper, all of these different things. How you gonna feel about yourself? You're gonna feel bad. So what most persons do know is use drugs to feel better about themselves. But the sad truth about this is that the drug don't solve the problem.
Smoking of cigarettes, one commonly used drug, is a contributor to several disorders and cancers.
92% of all oral cancer is caused from smoking tobacco. 82% of all lung cancer is caused from smoking tobacco. Yes, 80 plus chemicals inside of it contribute to gum disease. That's why the teeth change color or they drop out.
Hookah, also known as water pipe tobacco, is no less dangerous. An hour-long smoking session is equal to inhaling smoke from 100 to 200 cigarettes. When it comes to smoking marijuana or ganja, its effect on a teenager is different from an adult smoker. In addition to smoke causing damage to the lungs, it impacts the brain.
Your brain is not yet fully developed. Where the box is, that part of the brain controls the executive function of the body. Weighing risk, consequent, thinking, all of this. How much you know have a friend right now and they must smoke weed? And like they can't reason properly. It's like your friend a change. How much person knows somebody know while smoke weed and it's like they get ignorant easy.
Research shows that frequent smoking of ganja from the teenage years into adulthood leads to a significant decline in IQ levels. The dangers of smoking ganja are heightened when unknowingly combined with other ingredients.
Most of you get your weed from your friend them, right? You don't know where your friend them or the shop or anybody or the dealer give you. Because if somebody want to mash up your life, all them have to put a lizard tail in it and it done. Or they mix it with cocaine and it done. So you don't know where you are smoke. So that's why I said every time you smoke is like a gambler risk.
Then there is grabba, a deadly mix of ganja with tobacco and sometimes with other ingredients.
When it comes to the red herring grabber and the red rose, that's what they call a hot grabber because those are the one with chemicals. How they make the red herring grabber is simple this way. Grabber is tobacco leaf. So what they do is mix the tobacco leaf with the red herring fish. They wrap it up or they dip the tobacco in the water and let it dry. So when you're smoking that now, you're smoking chemicals from fish, tobacco, and ganja.
So, maintain a healthy diet, exercise regularly, and stay away from drugs. These should help you reap healthy rewards later in life. If you need help in maintaining a healthy lifestyle, contact the National Council on Drug Abuse at 926-9002-4 or the Jamaica Cancer Society at 927-4265.
Move it, I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. You like to move it. We want a productive Jamaica. We all are productive Jamaicans. Productivity to move forward on this land. Productivity, that's the way to go, we should understand. Productivity is the way to go for all us Jamaicans. Small business, big business, old and young, we are tell every woman and man. We want growth and prosperity, free a better nation with a building plan. So we can build our product and sell our product and put more money in our hand. Our economy can rise to a level and build a better nation. Productivity to move forward on this land. Productivity, that's the way to go, we should understand. Productivity to move forward on this land. Productivity, that's the way to go, we should understand. Productivity.
Productivity, Pathway to Prosperity. A message brought to you by the Jamaica Productivity Center, a department of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security.
If you are between the ages of 18 to 35 and you are not employed or enrolled in school or any training program, there is hope. The Housing Opportunities Production and Employment Program, HOPE, is geared at improving the social prospects of Jamaicans. It involves skills training through apprenticeship work programs and personal development. HOPE is providing educational and job opportunities for you. Yes, you. The aim is to engage 10,000 to 15,000 young people initially, and so far, hundreds have registered to be among the numbers. This is an initiative by the government giving hope to Jamaica's youth. Justice for one, justice for all. Youths, do your lives justice and live a clean, healthy life. Jamaicans, your cries have been heard. Justice is being served through the Plea Bargaining Legislation. I hope you found our program informative, and we'd also appreciate your feedback. So send them to Jamaica Magazine at jis.gov.jm. Take a trip to our social media pages on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and stay informed on the go. You can also visit our website, jis.gov.jm, for more information. On behalf of the entire production crew, I am Theodore Henry. Thanks for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.